2024, true crime was the most searched genre on Netflix in all of America. True crime has seen a dramatic increase of media presence in the last few years with the creation of podcasts, TV shows, and movies featuring well-known murder mysteries or new murder mysteries. So why is everyone so obsessed with this genre? What draws them in? To find that out, we must go back to the beginning of history where it originated.
Back to England.
We can date the beginning of true crime to around the 1500s in New England when crime pamphlets started popping up in daily newspapers, detailing gory murders that were read all throughout England. The 1500s marks the era where true crime began to be consumed in literature. In 1829, the Metropolitan Police Department was established, and people started becoming more interested and aware of crime. In 1892, the first trial to sweep the nation was about a man named Andrew Borden and his wife, who were hacked to death by their daughter. This trial was one of the most popular crimes back in the day and was attributed to be just as popular as O.J. Simpson's trial was now.
At this point, there was a rise in literature of true crime. Novels like Sherlock Holmes got extremely popular. Since then, true crime literature has risen, now being one of the top genres. Just one example of how true crime has gotten more popular in media.
Now that we've learned the history of true crime, we must go consult an expert, Miss Dial, my forensics teacher.
My name is Carmen Dial. I teach forensic science here at Huntington High School. So I think that the media portrays it as sensational, whereas the true crime obsession is actually like seeking understanding and to look for patterns. So I think that that's really the obsession, is kind of like understanding this phenomenon. In the last few years, we really have seen every single case that is almost all the cases are high profile cases. So if, for example, the murders from last year, there has been, I think that within a couple weeks there were already documentaries out, like on ABC 2020. It's not just like small YouTube influencers that are doing it. It's large media companies that I'm hoping that with more focus on the criminal behavior, that we can more, as general citizens, we can protect ourselves better, and we can understand how crime. But yes, if you watch a lot, you can really get desensitized. And I think for maybe the wrong audience, and maybe the wrong audience would be people who don't have an understanding of how to cope with those sort of scary topics, maybe they can misunderstand it. So I really do think that supervision for children should be definitely advised, and parents should be talking to children about what they're watching and consuming as far as media goes. Best thing is that it just puts it out there. There's a conversation going, especially with TikTok. I love that TikTok is a huge community forum where people can bounce ideas off of each other, and just the pure amount of information that's out there on social media pales in comparison to the way things used to be.
As we all know, true crime has been in literature forever. But what about podcasts? The first true crime podcast, Serial, made its debut in 2014, and it gained popularity from solving a cold case. The show examined a case dealing with a convicted murderer, Syed. While examining the case, Serial determined there wasn't enough evidence to convict him. This conviction reopened the case and set Syed free after 23 years. This has happened with other podcasters, like Hedley Thomas, Payne Lindsay, and many others. This is one example of how true crime podcasts have helped victims.
Many women say true crime has also helped them stay more vigilant. They are more aware of their surroundings, and they arm themselves with pepper spray or tasers to stay safer at night or in the day. This can also make them feel safer knowing about situations and how to get out of them. And say being more aware and protected can stop crime from happening to them. This can help prevent some crime. Another aspect of true crime media that has seen a dramatic increase is documentaries and reenactments. According to The Ringer, documentaries are the most searched genre of media on Netflix. can be seen through shows like The Act, Dahmer, Love and Death, and even more about real killers. A problem that has come up in recent years, though, is who's cast in these reenactments. When conventionally attractive people are casted, like Evan Peters or Zac Efron, it can cause problems. Some of the problems started on TikTok when people started editing these killers. These are edits of killers easily found on TikTok. Some of them are of real killers like Richard Ramirez. Others are real killers but portrayed by someone else like Jeffrey Dahmer or Elizabeth Olsen. These edits portray serial killers as attractive, which can be extremely harmful to the victim's family and the true crime community in general. It can also be harmful because young, impressionable people see these TikToks and think it's okay to romanticize killers and crime in general. This fandom ideology has happened in the past, but with TikTok, it's become more normalized and widespread. This has also caused people to question if the show should even be made because people are romanticizing it. Other negatives of consuming true crime can be paranoia and desensitization to violence, and sometimes have bad effects on mental health, and result in unhealthy obsessions. There are also some problematic true crime podcasts. Sometimes they can be quite disrespectful to victims and families. Can sometimes be unprofessional when talking about the situations. These three men run a podcast called Last Podcast on the Left, and many people have problems about them being disrespectful to people like JonBenet Ramsey, who is a child who was murdered. So, to answer the question from the beginning, why is true crime so popular? There's multiple reasons. It provides entertainment to some, to try to understand why criminals do what they do. It's a way for some women to learn how to protect and defend themselves. There have been some negatives, like TikTok, romanticization of criminals, desensitization, but there's also positives, spreading messages, doing more research, and actually helping solve cases at some point. While social media does harm it at some point, it also helps it. There just needs to be a balance between the two, and hopefully more helpful in the future, now that people know that some things can harm investigations.